Jeff Pistola with you with another edition of HFL Chat, now with the Hills Football League approaching their, 60th season. We thought it'd be great to periodically just look back and profile some of the characters, identities who've made the great contribution to the league and made it what it is today. And we thought it's, only appropriate we start off with a real Legends edition, if we can call it that, Legends Chat, with a guy who had extremely great influence on the league in its first 2 decades, I'd suggest. A man who, was the first man to win 3 male medals at the top level of the competition. Premiership player, premiership coach, coached 3 sides to grand finals. Also, I think it's the rare feat of having played in and also coached the winning Hills Football League Lovelock Shield Carnival team. I think they've only won 3 in the history of the competition, which of course doesn't exist anymore. Also played over 500 games, done everything. It's a great privilege to have the great man Mick Weatherald join us. Mick, welcome to HFL Chat Legends edition, the first Legends.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
And also, I know on the previous Hills Football League chats, we've had guys who might be princes of the midfield, kings of the goal square, but you're probably the most decorated man besides the 3 male medals. Also, Order of Australia for service to the sport, football and cricket. So we're very honoured in that aspect. What do we refer to you as, sir or or what?
No, don't do that.
All right, Mick, well, just first of all, take us back for where it first started, your involvement with Hills football.
Well, I go back to Hills. The Hills League started before the Hills Football Association. I reckon I played my first game there while I'm pretty sure I was 8, playing an under 16 competition for Heathfield.
Were you a big 8-year-old or just necessities?
Well, that's all we had. And I remember playing Stirling one day. We got beaten by 50 goal.
Wow.
And my favourite position was the back pocket. Now, the reason it was the back pocket was the ball was always there. And we stuck together, and basically that team became the basis of the Heathfield Aldgate success later on, because we all stuck together and there were many of that side. And the ironical part of that was in 1961, the Hills Colts, we won the premiership against Uradla, who were undefeated. And it was in 1961, and the Hills folded that year, and there was no more of the Hills Football Association. And Heathfield, as it was, went to Adelaide, and we played in the Sturt Saturday morning competition. And that Saturday morning competition was under 15. But the ironical part of it was 14 boys that played the year before in the under 16 competition in the Hills was still able to play. So we virtually won a Hills premiership with an under 14 side, which was a remarkable achievement. The under 15s, of course, we won it down there. But then I reckon I achieved something else for Heathfield. I played in their only senior premiership side, and I turned 15 just before the grand final. So I was virtually under 15 playing, and I played in the grand final side for Heathfield. And then, of course, in 67, 66, of course, what happened then was we combined with Aldgate to have Heathfield Aldgate United. And then the next year we came back to the Hills. I'd been playing in Sturt. I didn't play the first game. And the second game I played, and we won that. And then we went on, we were rank outsiders to win the premiership, and a lot of people in the Hills thought we wouldn't be good enough for the Hills Football League.
Well, I was just going to mention when the Hills Football League was actually formed in 1967 with Torrens Valley and Hills Central getting together. There was actually 3 zones, as I was called then. I think the Central, Northern and Southern. And also, I think the fact is, Mick, that Heathfield were actually granted probationary status to play in the top tier, which was the Central Division, as you said, finished in the 4, go through and beat red-hot favourite Uradla in the grand final. And given what we'll talk about down the track about Heathfield's success, I wonder how long the probation lasted. Or was it still going when they left the comp?
Well, that was the, fascinating thing. And we had a pretty good side. Bruce Dean's come back and played a bit too in that year.
Yep.
There are a lot of other players that, we were pretty competent. And Yeah, we did well. Lynn Evans as a coach.
So Lynn had success as a junior coach at Stirling.
He did.
Took over and back-to-back A-grade flags.
No, he did well, and that the other part was we started playing on became the new Heathfield Oval. Those early days of the Hills Association, we had to play on the inside of the old Skyline
Speedway, which is now Heathfield High.
Heathfield High. So we played there, and but we stuck together, and most of us came from Heathfield. But then I would say something I learnt later on is what Heathfield did. They started when they went to Saturday Morning League in town. They entered an under-13 competition as well that no one else in the Hills had. And through that, a lot of the Stirling boys who were at Stirling, would have played for Stirling under-16s, they started playing for Heathfield on the stroke of genius of, like I say, Stan Evans. They formed that side. And so all the Stirling boys came over, of which there were some pretty handy players came, namely the Hamptons. Who lived virtually right on Stirling Oval. They virtually lived on the Oval there, but they came to play as juniors at Heathfield. And later on, when other sides got under 13s, Heathfield formed an under 11 team. So they started getting all the players from there, and many of those boys became the balance of the Heathfield A grade. And I suppose the biggest coup of the senior players was getting the DeRoos brothers over from Stirling.
Herman and Johnny, yes.
And I still rate Herman DeRoos one of the best players to play in Hills football in my time.
Yeah, fantastic defender, centre half back, just raking clearances, etc. All right, 1968, Heathfield Aldgate proved it was no fluke the previous season. First up having a flag, then they follow up 68, which is a very famous final at Harndorf. I think last kick of the day, virtually Harry Deans kicks a goal, which they win by 4 points, 3 or 4 points, I think. Because the boot became immortalised. I think it's still in the club rooms at the Mount Lofty Oval. The painted golden.
That was the golden boot, yeah.
And of course that year individually, you win the first of your male medals.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, then 69, the next couple of years, I think, do you drift back down to try a crack at league football?
No, I was at Sturt, and Sturt wouldn't clear me.
Yep.
I was trying to go to West Adelaide.
Yep.
And Sturt wouldn't clear me.
Yep.
And then eventually, after 13 tries, I got a clearance to West Adelaide.
So where did you play football? As I said, 69, 70, 71?
Oh no, I played for. I played Lovelock Shield in 69. I went through the first half of the year, and I didn't.
For Heathfield?
Yes. And I played nearly all that year, and I only went down for the last. I played about 8 games or 9 games for West, and I did fairly well.
Yeah.
Then the next season, actually, that year I was named an emergency for West Adelaide. There was a drawn preliminary final, and I got named as an emergency for West Adelaide.
That was back in the Murray Wiedemann days.
That's who the coach was, Murray Wiedemann.
Yep.
And so through that, then the next year I went to trial, and I got badly injured in a trial game. I hurt a shoulder.
Yes.
And I came back and started playing in the Hills. It would have been about round 5, 4 or 5. And, I played out the Hills. That was Warren's.
So that was at Heathfield Aldgate?
That was Warren Foster's first year. And ironically enough, the other thing which, in my last game in 69 was in Adelaide Oval against South Adelaide. And ironically enough, Warren played in that game as well, and that was the last game he played.
Yes.
For South, and he moved to the Hills, and through Hayden O'Shaughnessy and others, he got talked into coaching Heathfield.
Yeah.
Heathfield Aldgate as it was at the time.
Yeah, so 1970 was his first year. It was runners up to Mount Barker, who won back to back.
Yeah.
So, you as coach, where's that come into it?
That came the next year. I went to Stirling.
71.
71.
Okay.
Yep. I coached Stirling 4 years for 71. And ironically, there's a bit of history there. I got approached to coach Stirling by Royal Charlton, who had coached me at under 1965 at Sturt under 19s. And so I got to know Royal very well. And so Royal asked me, would I like to coach Stirling? And well, it was an opportunity to coach. So I took that on board. And
given the fact that you're a Heathfield lad, as far as football had grown up, then the amalgamation, and given, as you know, what was one of the fiercest rivalries ever existed between two neighbouring sides, Heathfield Aldgate and Stirling, the fact of you going to coach going to the dark side to coach the bitter enemy, how'd that go down in the local area?
Not very well, but what had happened was, what a lot of people don't know, I'm heavily involved with cricket as well. And I had a brother. No, I didn't. Yeah, I did. I had a brother playing cricket. Heathfield didn't have a cricket side. So I started coaching Stirling Colts cricket. Oh. And therefore I got to know all the young boys, including the Brian Moleses, the Wybrows and that sort of thing. And ironically enough, I had, Heathfield juniors, young ones playing there too. Well, I coached them for 2 years and we won 2 premierships. The next year, Heathfield Cricket Club formed.
Yes.
And I went and coached Heathfield. And Stephen Simons and a few of those guys who were pretty handy cricketers, they came over to Heathfield and I coached them for 3 years. We only lost 1 game in 3 years and won 3 premierships there. So that's how I knew the Stirling people. And Royal Charlton, whom was very good to me and gave me a lot of encouragement at Sturt, so I thought I'd have a crack at coaching. Well, a lot of people said I would coach one day. And so that's when my coaching began, and that was the reason I went there to coach. Sure it was. We got beaten by Heathfield, and we didn't beat them at all. And I'm not sure, since Heathfield Aldgate came into the Hills Football League, I think Stirling may never have beaten. If they did, they only beat them once.
Yeah, I can verify the last time Stirling, might even be the only time, Mick, was the 1969 first semi-final at Mount Barker.
That was the one.
They beat them in the first semi-final.
Yeah.
And Stirling actually went on to play in the grand final against Mount Barker. But I believe that was the last time that they beat until the club's amalgamated.
Well, it's the only time.
In 1978.
I think the only time, and of course, you mentioned the year 69, and I got the blame for that. I'd gone to town to play.
Ah, okay. Well,
all right. Another reason I went to town to play as well, but I'm not.
There you go. As we said at the top of the interview, how influential you were, so therefore you used to influence results, Mika, very, very closely. Well, but as you said, take into 2 of the best grand finals I think the Hills has ever seen, 72-73 against Heathfield, particularly the 73 one, which are a real chance, but that's the time for another story.
Exactly.
What happened there.
Exactly.
And then 1975, you actually find your way back to your original club, Heathfield Aldgate, as playing coach.
Yep.
And, what we might do is take a break and we'll come back and discuss one of the most interesting situations I've ever heard of in the history of football. But we're on Legends Chat, back with more shortly.
I'm Trent Shawland, Principal of Harcourts Adelaide Hills. So I've been running the business now for 25 years. We obviously specialise in residential sales and rural sales, property management, and we do some commercial work as well. It's a family owned and family run business. Both my children, Harry and Georgia, and my wife Kim are in the business as well. Long standing business that we're very, very proud of. For Kim and I, it's been all about what we can put back into the community as well. So the sport and local events have been something we've really focused heavily on to make sure that we are putting back into our local Adelaide Hills community. We've got 2 offices, one's in Mount Barker, 58 Gawler Street, and the second one here at Stirling is 8-12 Mount Barker Road, Stirling.
We've created pure magnesium blends designed to be part of a daily ritual that supports your body the way nature intended.
We wanted to create something simple, natural and effective that's not just about a product, it's about helping you feel your best every day naturally.
I've designed this Recover blend for athletes who can recover anytime, anywhere. Magnesium is one of the most important minerals for your recovery. Check out the blends at refuelwellness.com.au.
Back here in HFL Chat, inaugural Legends edition with Michael Weatherald. And well, just like you in 1975, Michael, have had a change of scenery. You returned to old stomping ground at Heathfield Oval. And well, fantastic during that era of Heathfield. Obviously coached against them for 3 years. You're back home, taken to undefeated premiership in 1975, which also, I believe, one of the biggest winning aggregate margins in the history of the competition was that year for that Heathfield team.
I think that's right. I think the club only lost one game in the 3 grades too. I think we won all 3 premierships.
Yeah,
senior premierships there.
So, and when you think about today's football, and I suppose like all through the years, coaches are based on, well, their performances are based on wins and losses.
That's right.
You go through an unbeaten season, then a premiership coach, then the next year, obviously put your hand up to coach again, but you're overlooked because the man we talked about before, Warren Foster, spent that year, 75 down at West Torrens, I believe, coaching under 17s, decides to come back.
Yeah,
is appointed over you. So
which is fine, you know.
At the time, though, it must have been a bit of a kick in the proverbial.
Well, it was, and it's interesting that 75 year, there was another achievement there. I think it's been overlooked a bit by the club, that I'm still today the only ever homegrown coach to coach either Heathfield Aldgate or Mount Lofty to a premiership.
Ah.
No one else has done that. Others have coached, but they didn't win premierships. And because I'd come through the juniors, I was homegrown basically, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one to have coached a premiership.
And given what you just said, we'll get onto it a bit further down the track in your coaching experiences, but I think you're the only man also to have coached Stirling, Heathfield Aldgate, the 2 member clubs, foundation clubs, and also Mount Lofty at A grade level.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one to do that. And I also played for Heathfield as well, who are another part of the club. And the other ironic part of all of it too, the Aldgate connection comes in because not a lot of people are aware that Julie's father, Brian Hewitt, coached the last premiership side Aldgate ever won.
Is that right?
And he played league football, a few league games for Norwood.
Oh, okay.
And he did coach that side. It's either 53 or 54 was the last premiership Aldgate won. So
after going to all the hassles and everything, obviously getting fitted, would this still fit you, Mick? The lace-up for the 1975 return season, you find yourself, putting it in the cupboard because you've moved on. So
I did.
How did it come about going to a team that was a great rival? In fact, you beat them in the 75 grand final, and I think they'd lost the last 2 grand finals to Heathfield, because Onkaparinga Valley, how does that come about, you move out there?
Well, Onkaparinga Valley, there are a couple of reasons. Number one, I'd always had a pretty good association with them through Bob Schmidt. And ironically enough, I'd been, half approached would I consider ever going there before, which I didn't. But what happened was Warren Masters actually worked for William Anglis as well, and Warren Masters, I went to work the next day after I'd been not appointed, and I said to Warren Masters, well, that approach made to me to the coach Onkers is still on. Well, I was appointed coach of Onkers, I reckon, within the next 24 hours.
Wow.
And so that's what happened, and that's how it come about.
Now, 1976, round 2, Heathfield have steamed ahead. As I said, Warren Foster back in charge. They've actually had a big win in the opening game of the season. In fact, Patrick Burgess has kicked 16 goals in a game against Mount Barker. Round 2, everyone's waiting for the grand final rematch, where the previous premiership coach of the club is now coaching the opposition. So Onka Valley taking on Heathfield Aldgate out at Balhano Oval. And as I said, 87 games undefeated. And of course, it comes to an end there under the guidance of you.
Well, that really is probably one of the highlights of my coaching.
I was going to say, how was that feeling, the fact that you, if I can use the terminology, you'd been, I won't say overlooked, you were actually sacked.
Oh, yeah.
So then you go out and you would have been a very happy man come 5 o'clock that day at Balhano Oval.
It was planned. When I was appointed coach of Onkers, we had a coaches meeting like they do. I'd been appointed. And I reckon the meeting we had was probably in October. And I said to the men, we can beat them, but you've got to do one thing. I knew Heathfield Aldgate planned to be at their peak at the end of the year, which was spot on.
Yep.
And it proved very successful the way they did it. Yeah, but early in the year I said the way we can beat them is we've got to get ourselves September fit in April.
Yes.
And we did. First night I trained there, we turned up to training, and I had over 50, in excess of 50 players turn up.
Wow.
And we trained pretty hard there, and ironically enough, that's what happened that day. The history of that game.
It was a very high scoring game, wasn't it?
Well, the final score was 25-14 to 15-11, and we kicked 10 the last quarter. And what happened that day was, it's reported that at half time we were in front, and there were cars or other towns nearby that wanted to see United get beaten.
The first time since 1971.
That's right. And people came to that game. Well, what happened was Heathfield came back in the third quarter. They kicked the first 2 goals the last quarter to be, I think, 4 goal up. Then we kicked 10-11 after that in the last quarter to 0. And we won by, 33 points. And that was, that was one of my greatest achievements.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a premiership. As I related many times after that win to Onka people, I said, we get a chance to win a premiership every year. You only get one chance to finish a run of 87, 88 games, whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah,
and we achieved it, and that still is folk stories at in Onka today.
Even now, it's still regarded from those who were around that time one of the great games of Hills.
Oh no, it had to be 45 goals
for a round 2 clash.
Well,
but as you mentioned, Mick, they had the knack of peaking when it was required.
They did.
The end of the season comes the grand final, you square off again.
They won.
They win.
I won both finals, and they were at their peak. And but for us to achieve that, that's what we aim to do. And we were a bit unlucky in the grand final. We only had one ruckman who got injured, Kevin Mattingly.
Yes.
And United played very well that day, and they won. But that's what happens, and credit to them. And they went on to win a lot of consecutive games after that grand final as well, didn't they? They won a whole heap of games in a row again. But the other thing that year that's been overlooked a bit, we did play Heathfield Aldgate 3 times in that period, 9 around. We won we won all 3.
There was a period of time, actually, you might recall this, at the Hills League, the Central Division, there was only 6 clubs in it.
There were, for a lot of years, there were only...
It was a very tight draw every 5 weeks of playing opposition.
Well, there were only 6. At one stage, the Hills League went to 4 zones.
They did, yes.
The period of 4 zones, I remember that
Archie won the only, and Archie won the only medals, and Mackie won the only zone 4 flag.
That's right, and they had 2 brilliant players involved, in Brenton Smith and Archie Crompton, who played for the clubs playing in that division. Nan Bremer, yeah. Might have only been
Bremer.
Bremer. Might have only
Yeah,
been
it was
Bremer
Bremer.
then,
Yeah, back
too.
then, the old
And that's-
Tigers. Yeah.
That's all the amalgamations of sides, and you know.
So 77, yeah, you're back up again as coach, and unfortunately, perhaps looked as one of the forerunners, but suffer a loss to Mount Barker in the preliminary final.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. Well, that happened. You know that they played well that day, and they had some good players, and
Yeah.
we got beaten that day. So you know.
But 77, if I can just, such a good-looking young man there. If I can focus, you win, and I think this is unique too, Michael. The fact that every side you played for, you actually won a male medal. So 68 with Heathfield Aldgate, 73, 74 at Stirling.
Yep.
And then in 1977, you tie with the late, great Jack Hunter.
That's it.
For the medal for a third one. So just on retrospect, looking back, was there one season out of those that you reckon was the best one?
To win it in '68, you know, obviously the first one you win.
Yeah.
I had a very good year then, but the Stirling one,
Yep.
I reckon I probably played my best football that 74 at Stirling.
Yeah.
You know, we had a very young side, and to get to the grand final that year was, no, we didn't make the grand final in 74, but that period at Stirling, I reckon I played as well as I'd ever played in that period at Stirling.
Now, during your time, because as we're talking off air, and you mentioned that you're probably still, even with the history of the clubs have been, you'd still count yourself as probably closer to Onkers than the other two clubs.
Yeah, well, I've maintained that.
And the situation here where you played some of the greats. Just tell us the history of this photo, which I hold up here.
Yeah, that photograph was taken at the end of that season. Rod Fenwick's in it, and Rod Fenwick won a male medal.
Come from Nan, is that correct?
Come from Nan. He was in the chicken trade, and he was working for Ingham's, I think, in the area. Bob Schmidt is in that. He won a male medal. And I'd won male medals too. And the other one there's probably one of the best players ever to play in the Hills, Phil Howlett. And when I went to Onkers, I remember the last game we played against Onkers, Phil played centre half back. And when I went there, I said, well, I know most of your players, but the one move we're making, Phil's going to go to full forward. And Phil kicked, I'm pretty sure he got 158 goals, 154 goals the first year and 138 the second. So we had a game plan we used to get a kick it to him, give him space, but it's a beautiful kick, and that's where the difference was.
So you were instrumental when he came up from South Adelaide to join, obviously the Bob Schmidt connection, to join Onkers. He was actually playing as a defender. You go there and you move him in the goal front, and the rest is history. After he was such a good full forward at South as well too.
Well, he kicked 9 goal on Ron Alloway in a Port Adelaide game one day in his last season. And, well, the other thought of it, Jack Odie taught me this. You got to attack.
Yep.
And that's the one mistake most people made when they played against Heathfield Aldgate. They all tried to defend and keep them down. Well, the evidence is there that we had to kick 25 goal to beat them, and they still kicked 20. And that just proved, you know, Jack Odie was well before his time with attacking football, and that's why, you know, Port had trouble beating him because they kicked too many goals.
Yeah. Now, this photo here, Mika, you've had, I think you chalked up over 500.
I did, yeah.
But the significance of this photo, you actually played your 500th career game for Onkers. What was it, in the C-Days or something? Or?
Well, that's what happened. I'd worked out, or someone worked out, I'd played 491 games, and Onkers had a third grade team with Oppen. So Ross Swain, who was a friend who played with me at Stirling, followed me to Onkers.
Yep. And
he said, why don't you come and play? And they were short of players one day, so I did play to help them out. And I did all right. And ironically, I went back and played where I started. I finished up playing in the back pocket. And I started playing in the back pocket at 8 years of age. So that was good fun playing there, and I kept playing after that.
Yeah.
And but that was something I played a lot. People have got to realise, back when I was young, I would play for Scotch College. I'd get picked up, brought to the Heathfield game, and quite often I'd sit on the bench or play in their senior side. So I was playing 3 games in a day. and that's how the game's mounted up pretty damn quick, you know.
That's still 500, great, 500 plus a great achievement. And well done, a resilient performer, because having had the privilege of playing under you and seeing you play footy, and let's face it, you were pretty hard at the footy and determined. So, you know, for you carrying injuries, but to get to the 500, mate, that was a fantastic.
Yeah, I was lucky with injuries.
Yeah.
Like Tim was lucky with them too.
Yeah, yep.
You know, all the games we didn't get many injuries. So
now you move on because you get involved with Scotch, as you said, and also to Adelaide Uni. But then you rekindled, coaching in the Hills. You actually 1987, so we can see up behind you, for only the second time in the history of the competition, the Hills Football League win the overall Lovelock Shield competition, the first in 73 of which you were a playing member under Warren Foster, playing coach. 1987, you take the reins, they win it. Just take us through that.
Well, that was interesting. How I got to become coach of the Lovelock Shield team. I was at a game of cricket on Bridgewater Oval, and Tim would have been 10, playing cricket, and a bloke called David Carger, who was on the Hills Football League board. It started raining, so he come and sat in my car for half an hour while it was raining, and he said to me then, "You're coaching?" I said, "Oh no, I'm not coaching at the moment." He said, "Would you consider coaching the Lovelock Shield?" And I said, "Oh yeah, that'd be good." A couple of days later, I got a phone call from Chris Sheehan.
Yes, President.
And coach the Lovelock Shield. Well, there was a fact, I knew a bit about it, because through Lovelock Shield, a lot of the players wanted to play for the clubs that weren't keen on playing Lovelock Shield.
Yes, yep.
So I said to Chris, well, I'm going to resolve that. So what I did, every Saturday, I would go and watch a game where prospective the best players in the Hills were playing.
Yes.
And I'd go and have a drink with them after game, and quite often more than what I should have. And
it's called networking, Michael.
It cost me a bit of money, I can tell you. But eventually, the first night we trained at Ballahana, every player.
Is that right?
I wanted to play, all turned up to training, and obviously what was happening there, we'd do circle work, the ball would hit the ground. I'm like, how good is this? And a lot of them we see playing coaches.
Yes.
And when you're a playing coach, you spend a lot of time coaching, and training's hard, and they just loved it, the playing coach. And I reckon there were 5 or 6 on the side, you know, in that category. Yeah. And they loved the training. We had game plans. And our first game that year for the Lovelock Shield, it was in the state championships were played.
Yes.
And they were played over a couple of years. And our first game was against the Carry Narracourt League. And no one gave us hope of winning that game. So I did a bit of homework. I used to go to work at Narracourt, and they used to train at Narracourt. And so I went and watched them train a couple of times, didn't I? I did my homework, and we got the team together, and we had game plans, particularly the wingman. Ricky Hannam hated me, and Shane McDonald loved it, because Shane McDonald was, with the method we were using, he was always going to be the player loose, and Ricky was going to have 2 wingmen on him. And Ricky did a marvellous job.
Yeah.
Defensive action he did in those games was underrated. And all those guys played, and of course, I think at half time against Carry Narracourt, I reckon we were 8 goal up. Of course, we played at Ballahana, and they used to playing on the big wide open ground, so I wanted to play at Onkers or Ballahana, just with the smaller ground. They'd have no movement. And eventually we got the Lovelock Shield came, and we won the first game pretty easily. And the Monday, that game came along, and we won it fairly well. The ironical part of that game was Peter Munn was playing full forward. I think he kicked 6 on the Saturday, and on the Monday, they had a big fella. I think it was the Southern League, had a big guy playing full back. And so what happened, Money did his hamstring in the first quarter, so I put Albie Lewis on.
Yep.
And Albie Lewis had 5 by half time, I think. And he played on this big guy, and it was a big ground, so just kick it out into space.
Yeah.
And the lads were good enough to do that. And, you know, we won it well. And, yeah, and that was a highlight. And many a story after with that. There's some great memories. We still talk about it today when we get together winning that Lovelock Shield, because the Hills didn't win many Lovelock Shields.
No, only 3 in total.
That's right. You know,
As we
so
said, in nearly 60 years, because the Lovelock Shield unfortunately defunct.
it went, which was a shame.
Yeah.
But the other thing that was fascinating about those inter-association games was we played the state championships game, as they called it.
Yes, yep.
And that was played against every state league. We got to the grand final. We went up to Jamestown and beat the northern areas. Then we went to, I think, Kadina and won a game up there. And we got to the grand final to play Eyre Peninsula. Well, as I do, I did my homework, so I flew over to Port Lincoln and watched them train, try and get a bit inside. And they had this bloke who was a pretty quick. So anyway, we kicked the first 2 goals at Albion Oval in a pre-league game. I reckon they kicked the next 10. And this bloke, I reckon his name was Davey.
Mm-hmm.
We put our
Famous
quickest
name, yes.
player on him. And all of a sudden, he got the ball on the wing right in front of the coach's box, and he took off, looked behind him, and he went. And we had our quickest player on him. But they had 4 or 5 players like him, and they were far too good. But the ironical part of that story, we made the grand final, just the Hills Football League. After that year, they changed the country championships, and all the Hills Lovelock Shield teams are all put into one zone, the southern zone. And the next year, they made the grand final, played Eyre Peninsula again, and they got beaten by, not as much as we did, but they still got beaten well. So to achieve that performance and make that country grand final just as the Hills Football League was a remarkable achievement. And the players, credit to them, they all put the effort in, they all wanted to play. And that's something which we had trouble before. And it was a real shame that I think the Lovelock Shield weekend has, you know, disappeared.
You're on HFL Media and our HFL Legends chat, and we'll be back with more shortly.
Mount Barker Ford is located just Totnes here on Mount Barker Road. We're owned by a gentleman by the name of Peter Thomas, who his veins are rich with football and rich with community, and he's always been based around the idea that everything you do in business should be based around how you can support the community. At the end of the day, I don't expect people to always come and see us, but ultimately we're a business who thrive in supporting the community, and from our perspective we look forward to the community supporting us. And it doesn't matter whether it be the Call of the Wild, the HFL, we're involved in a lot of other community events throughout the Hills, and that's why I like being involved with sport, because I think that brings everyone together at different times and different requirements.
Australian Paving Centre has been established since 1986, but we're more than just paving. We're retaining walls, concrete sleepers, garden walls, stone cladding, and natural stone is certainly a big part of our business. We've got good quality staff that give good quality customer service. If you go to www.australianpaving.com and then to find a store, you can find all of our 15 stores at that website.
Hi, it's John here from Littlehampton Landscape and Firewood. We have all your landscaping supplies. We have our premium firewood, from our red gums to our blue gum to our mallee root. Come down and see us. We're just behind Littlehampton Clay Bricks and Pavers.
Hi, I'm Jared Tate and I'm from AHLG. AHLG is all about making life better, one outdoor space at a time. From landscape design to high-end landscape construction and all your lawn and garden maintenance needs. We're based in the Adelaide Hills and we've got you covered.
Jeff Pistola with you back here on HFL Media, HFL Chat, our inaugural Legends edition, and with the great man Michael Weatherald, AOM, has been filming some great past history of the Hills Football League. So Michael, 1987, as we said, coaching the rep team to success. You decide to, get the hunger back in the belly, come back and coach your fourth Hills Football League club, that being Mount Lofty, 1988.
Yep, that was good. No, well, that had a disastrous time before that.
Well, I won the flag in 86 and
That's
had a
right.
massive exodus of players.
That's right.
87.
And that's what happened was, so, you know, they, like I got approached to, like coach them again there, and which we did. And there was it was different. Things had changed a bit in local footy. The discipline to want to play the game, like I found, wasn't there. Whereas before, guys would train every night of the week. But what I did, I introduced a lot of young players into the side. And that's what I did in 88. And ironically enough, a lot of the players that got introduced in 88 became members of premiership sides.
1990 under Andrew Downs, yeah.
There.
Hey, I bet you one thing that you said about the change, but one thing that hadn't changed, and unfortunately for you, rekindled the memories of the cold, wet, windy nights in July at Goat Park in Heathfield.
Oh no, they were there, and there were cold nights there. And you never, I got to admit, I never realised how cold the hills was for football until I went and coached an amateur league.
Yeah.
It was, you don't realise, we didn't realise how cold it was. And
well, you know, coming down the freeway, you get to Glen Osmond and it's like
That's
driving
right.
through a tunnel with the fog, and you get down here and the sun's out and whatever. So
well, I noted with interest when Mount Lofty went to Safa, that I looked at the results. When they played away, quite often they were beaten comfortably. When the same team played us at home, they couldn't beat us.
I think Port Districts in the inaugural season found that out, unbeaten until they got to Heathfield.
They got there.
July, yeah,
That's right. You know, it's a bit of a different game, and you know, the boys knew how to play that game. But no, they got there, but you know, and that's why I think when they came back to Saffron, and then through the period of the last 20 or 30 years in the hills, with that one good period where they won the 3 flags in a row. But apart from that, you know, it's been pretty tough going. And Michael was doing a very good job with that.
Yeah, certainly at the moment they're sitting on top of the ladder, but
you know, he's got him there, and he stayed there for a while to do that.
In fact, a club like Mount Lofty, the inglorious thing of being dropped to the Division 2 there for a season. Of course, far too different to comp and won a flag, but when you think one of the powerhouse clubs, it's...
Well, and that's it, Matt.
You see it all the time in the Admiral League, which you've been associated with.
Oh, you do?
Clubs are right down in certain divisions now who are in the Premier League years ago.
I know it happened, but I think the other thing that, like I look at a positive aspect at it just realised at the time when it was going on and winning all the games in a row and winning all the premierships, I don't think people really realised what a great effort that was.
Yes.
And it's only come since the difficulty of Mount Lofty in the last 30 odd years that the significance of what Warren and the boys did in that period, you know, just shows. Yeah.
And I think that record, actually, the 87 stood until about 2019 or something, when Yeppoon all teams.
Yeah, well, I know a bit about Yeppoon. That's where I used to stay when I'd go to Rockhampton. And, you know, I knew that those games were building up because people were telling me they knew I'd been involved with Heathfield Aldgate. And I said, you know what we should do? We should go and pay a few players, bring them in for a week and stuff them up. And But the competition up there was a pretty ordinary competition compared to the Hills Football League. So if you had 4 or 5 good players that stuck together, you could achieve that. It's still a great effort though.
But, and also, don't sell yourself short, because as you mentioned, Warren Foster was a principal coach, and but yourself, that era, you were part of it, so as a coach.
Sure.
And,
sure.
Now, you're not finished with premierships, because 1991, you coached at Bridgewater in the junior Colts.
That's
and
right.
Of course your son Timmy Weatherald, and also Benny Nelson are involved, who went on to later glory we'll get onto with Sturt. But how was that?
Well, how'd that come about? Well, it was interesting that Bridgewater had never won, and I knew they'd never won a premiership, and Tim had been playing up there in the morning, and they'd get belted every week, and half the time they had really young boys playing. So in 91, it was Tim's last year. I was coaching schoolboys at Scotch College at the time as well. And so what happened was, I was coaching Ben Nelson at Scotch College, and he was the best player in the under-15s or year 10, whatever it was. Tim was at PAC, he was the best player in that comp. And Scotch, that was a poor year group. That's why Tim ended up at PAC and not Scotch. And in the year 8, Cameron Nelson was playing there, Tim's younger brother, Ben's younger brother. So we were going all right. Nonkers were pretty hard to beat. They were undefeated. They were going all right. And they'd recruited blokes from Ross Trevor College, where Ben Kemp was going to school. So he had a few Ross Trevor College boys come up. But I learned a bit from Heathfield Aldgate. So it was 6 games to go. You had to play 6 games to qualify. I found out who the best under-14 player at Scotch was, Michael Quinn, and I brought him up as well. And they couldn't get any more players after that. We had a plan for the grand final, but at half time in the second semi-final, we were 6-4 to 0 down, I think. So I had to throw on my cards in that game. We got beaten by 2 points. And we went into the grand final pretty confident. And we did win the grand final easily. And that's still the only premiership today that they've ever won. And what the good part about that was, there are a lot of little Bridgewater boys that used to get beaten week in, week out. And that's a highlight of their football career still today. When I see them around, or Tim sees them around, or Benny Nelson sees them around, and Ben sees them regularly because Ben actually supplies the clothing to Bridgewater Football Club, or did until they folded. So, like he does that. I understand now, I'm pretty sure Ben's got the Mount Lofty contract.
Yes. I
think that. So his adjunct with the Hills has been good, and that's when he come to the Hills. And Cameron Nelson, he says, best day of his life, the premiership he won at Bridgewater.
Well, fantastic. Now, I suppose what we must finish off with is probably one of your, I know you said what you've achieved in the Hills, but one of the greatest achievements, and also being a Sturt supporter, it was fantastic. The 2002 Sandford Premiership, mate, for a club which, 6 years previously had been almost shut the doors on it.
Correct.
I know you're involved with that progression up, and but just fantastic. And I remember being down there working for the Courier, and I was actually able to get a picture of John Wellesby snuck me in. And if you remember, I got a picture of you with the Thomas Hill and the 5 or 6 Hills connections, Matty Cooper, Barney French, these sort of guys. Fantastic. Just what an achievement that must have been. That must have been also a proud moment for you.
Oh, remarkable. What we achieved there, and obviously, as we talk about now, Brenton came in, but Phil did a marvellous job before that. We got the 98 grand final. Without that group of boys, and I say today that, without Phil Carman, Chris Redgold, Bruce Leonard, Andrew Geddes and Johnny Richter, they were the 4 boys that stayed on. All the rest left. And they stayed on, and I started there with reserves in 96 and league in 97. And we just kept recruiting guys from reserves from other clubs, and that included Brodie Atkinson, who was reserves at North Adelaide. The only one we didn't get from another club who wasn't playing reserves footy, and that included the Mark Soderstroms, and the only one wasn't was Damien Squire.
Yep.
And but they were marvellous days, and those lads are still very close together today. And I gave a lot of them jobs too, so that helped. We got them. They started off their working careers working for me, so and they were good workers. I knew they were going to be there every day, so that worked out well. But that was what we achieved there.
Yeah.
And ironically, part of that game, most people don't realise the coach of Central's in the grand final. That was Alistair Clarkson.
Yes.
And
yes, it was.
We did something in that period that I thought we were onto. And Alistair Clarkson, I still say, copied us. 9 left footers. And Alistair Clarkson, you look at Hawthorn today,
Yep.
when he coached them, they had a heap of left footers.
Yeah.
And we had them at Sturt. We had them at Sturt under Phil. I think we had more under Phil than we had under Brenton, but I think we had about 8 left footers. And, I reckon Alistair copied it. He probably didn't.
As we said, Mick, at the earlier in the chat, you're influential. That's for sure. Hey, and talking about influential, and as a parent, you could only be that proud, and obviously you were influencing this guy coming up. We're talking about your son Tim and him sharing the McGarry medal, but also two Sturt blokes. That's very unique.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it
From
was.
the same club sharing the McGarry medal. That must have been a very proud moment, not only for Tim, but for yourself.
No, he played very well. He played good league footy to play all the games he played.
300?
311 he played.
Up with Nord, yes.
58 at Norwood and 253 at Sturt. But
he
he came from the Hills.
Yeah.
Like the Hills product, McGarry medalist from the Hills. So the Hills Football League can, be pretty proud of that. That's where he came from.
The great Wacker Scott, I suggest, as Hills
Wacker Scott won there.
Yeah.
He another champion Aldgate player, wouldn't he? I think Wacker Scott, but no, he did. He did well, and he's obviously now he's into coaching. It's ironically both my children are coaches. Karina coaches at netball at Contacts, and now the grandchildren are both coaching. Or 2 of the grandchildren are coaching now, young children as well. So the genetics have been passed down the line.
Well, seeing of that, who when you first took up, who influenced Mick Weatherald as a coach? You mentioned Jack Odie, but who?
Royal Charden.
Royal Charden.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I know Royal. We're pretty close. I remember going to Royal's place, as Chris knows the story, but go to Royal's place and his wife would get the cup of tea out, the teapot out, but sit there for the next 3 hours. And that's when I was coaching at Sturt in the 19s, and I was captain of that. So him and I picked the team.
Yeah.
Others thought they were there, but Royal picked the team, and he was terrific. He was. He talked about work ethic, all that sort of stuff, and I know Royal was the person who motivated me to coach.
And this will be a tough question for you. Most respected opponents in the Hills Football League, or slash players that you really enjoyed playing with or against, just as footballers? I know you mentioned Herman de Roos.
Yeah, I still say Herman de Roos was the best player I saw in the Hills. Herman de Roos's point of difference was he was a powerful kick. Yep. And with a wet ball going uphill on that oval, he could still kick over the line, which is the big thing they talk about in football today. But he was, I still say he was as good as any player, a player in the Hills. Bob Schmidt, fantastic player. Phil Howlett, you couldn't fault. And, at Stirling, there were a couple of blokes that stand out there, and Vinnie Pistola and Harvey Dawes, they were terrific players there. Heathfield Aldgate had a number of players. Covey was...
Yeah, John Coventry.
I think Cov was before his time. He was a double-sided player, not unlike the Andrew Jarmans and Greg Williams who came later on, and he was before his time. Likewise, Warren Foster's influence with the reflex handball was 10 years before his time. That's where the success came, and used every players. But and there was Darcy Walsh was a great opponent. There was the lad from Lovelock, Malcolm King. I thought he was an outstanding player. Ashley Jarrett, your Adler, Jimmy Preusker was a star from Mount Barker. These guys in their own right, they all could have won male medals. You know, they were.
It's interesting that I should mention because a lot of them formed the nucleus of the Hills Lovelock Shield side during that period. So
they did, and
have more than one team was something very special.
And as we realised, Lovelock Shields were very hard to win because the River Murray paid a lot of players in those days to go up there, and they had teams and they had very, very good teams, and they were probably through our period, them in the Southern League were the dominant. The Great Southern League wasn't anywhere near as strong as it is today back in that period, because I think the population growth through your Victor Harbour and fluo areas has increased in the last 20 years, and that's made them very strong today. You know that, but no, they were all very good players, those lads, and there are other ones too that came through there. You know that.
Hey, can I just ask you, with your experience, obviously, as we touched on at the elite level, achieving the ultimate gold at Sandford, but the various community competitions you've been involved, Hills, Amateur League, the state of footy, how do you find it at the moment? It's all right? I know there's always problems in the Hills area with juniors, etc., but how do you see it?
The state of football, I reckon the state of football, I've made this comment to a lot of people, the current Collingwood coach, the AFL owe him a lot. He's brought attacking football back in, the forward handballs come back in, he'd take a risk to score, and football's far more exciting today than it's been for 10 years. This thing, kicking the ball back behind the line, I reckon apart from the forward lines, that should be called play on. And the other rule, the AFL, I can't believe why they won't bring anything out of bounds like the
Yes, agreed. You
know, that quickens the game up.
Yes, it's
Yep, and it keeps it going. Junior football, they've got enormous numbers coming through there, and the game's alive. But I just think the kids go to the football today, they do what the big boys do, and they try and score. And I've got grandchildren under 13 and 14 playing now, and they use the forward handball and run forward, and even the junior teams are scoring more now than what they used to. So, so well done to Collingwood coach. He was the one that set the pattern, and good on him.
Fantastic. Well, fantastic to have a chat to you, Mick. We'll have to get you back. We'll have to get you back into a summer edition, because obviously you have a great love and it's cricket, which we know some of the stuff you've done there, but we just haven't got time today. But we certainly look. You've been a fantastic role model as a young kid. I was lucky enough to play my first A-grade game under this guy, and just you set the example. I remember one day we were playing your raid on a boggy Stirling Oval at its best, and it was like, I think Tag Hunter was playing full back, and you'd get the ball and you'd kick it in, but couldn't kick the goal, and he'd kick it out and you'd mark it. And you virtually won on your own, willed Stirling back over the line to win after a well down. But certainly as an example you set for a young guy, and also with your coaching, as you talked about what you've done with the juniors and the Bridgewater kids who still look up to that as one of the highlights of their career.
Oh, they do, and that's why in sport, if you play sport, sure you've got the good players, but don't underestimate the players at the other end of the scale. You might be giving them the highlight of their sporting career. And I preach that a lot when I talk to people. And the one thing that, I don't like today, when there's a good player or someone's okay, too many people want to talk about what they can't do. You need to talk about what they can do. And that gives them self-esteem and confidence and allows them to go to the next level. But like anyone can find fault with someone, but never criticise unless you can correct.
Fantastic. Well, Mick, thank you very much for joining us. I said our inaugural, we knew it would be a great chat, and it's only fitting that we get you to kick off our series that we'll be running of HFL Legends. You've been a resident of the medals, the premierships, etc. So we thank you very much. And for everyone out there, thanks for joining us on HFL Media. Of course, we'll catch you on the Call of the Wild, and also keep a lookout for other future editions of HFL Chat. But until then, Jeff Pistola signing off, and we'll catch you next time here on HFL Media.